obviously, uh, I mean, it was a shock. Uh, we've talked about it for a couple of years, in broad strokes as a department, post COVID, et cetera, about, the things we need to be focusing on. And for us, obviously we can't control the bigger picture, never could. But for us, it was always, graduation rates and hitting our roster numbers, and ultimately one of the things that one of the other components that we always heard about was trying to win. And we won in my I think it was my second or third year, we won a conference title 2022, which was great. And it's one of those, celebrate it when you can. You never know if you're going to get back here again. Our conference has just gotten, stronger and tougher, especially on the men's side. The women's side has always been very competitive. And this year, we finished fourth. Um, but I looked at our times and results and realized that our team this year, finishing fourth, would have beaten the team in 2022 that won a conference championship. So, winning, there's always going to be one winner, but I felt like we were always on track. And with the ninth best freshman class this year and the 13th best coming in next year, I was super excited on the men's side. The women's side had finally broken into the top 30, to being fast. All that aside, the thing I was most excited about was who they were. This year's group was easily the most fun team that I have been around. We had problems, every team does. Culture is culture. It changes every year, and you got to battle through it. But especially the freshmen, the underclassmen, they were just the nicest, friendliest, hardest working. They were so enjoyable, and my staff and I loved them. Every year it's work. There's always work that comes with the territory, but we had so much fun with them. And again, never thought at any point, other than in our monthly department meetings, we're working on this, and my boss constantly told us that, over the years, if you ever thought, your program was safe, every program's been looked at in the past, and we had, no indication of it. We actually I realized that I signed my last signee announcement was exactly 1 week before, and I was waiting on an incoming freshman who I thought was coming. I thought she was done. It was just a matter of days. And we were over our roster goal on our women's side. We were one under on our men's side. We were waiting for one guy. So everything to me felt good. Um, in terms of building a schedule, all that kind of stuff, things were just fine. And here we are. It's 4 weeks later. The year's over. Everyone's gone home. Everyone's storage units are set up with all their clothes and furniture, everything for next year. And then we get this shock to the system. And that's what it was. It was a shock to the system. That was talking about the 7 stages of grief, and I went through them. In that first 5 minutes, I went through it, and then over the course of the last week. And the one thing I couldn't get out of my system, and I try to convey that in that message that eventually got posted up on SwimSwam, was just the sadness, just gutting, painful sadness for what I had promised these young people, not just the 18 or so coming, who I was so excited about, but everyone that was here. Just that we let them down. We didn't have the full picture. People weren't telling us everything they should have, either when they should have. And you can debate all of that. I'm not going to get into the negativity of it, but it was awful having to not even be the one to tell them. They found out 3 hours later on a Zoom call and a 10-minute call, but not being able to tell them and plan for it, and either try and work on a solution or try and help them. And that's what the last week has been, is reaching out. My assistant Chad Maurer and I have contacted coaches through all sorts of channels and have gotten great responses. But the frustrating part about that is, we're sending these kids out to find new homes, but we were their home. Like, we won the recruiting battle. We brought them here. They found this place. They found us. They found the community. They found what they thought was where they're supposed to be. And to be let down, to be betrayed, like this, you can't shake that. That's not something, yeah, we're trying to find new homes, and places to go and maybe be happy. But they've all said they're comparing it to us. They're comparing it to who we were and what we were. And that's put that on an 18 to 22-year-old who is unable to make the decision themselves. And I know I'm rambling a little bit, but that's where we've been for the last week. And it's an empty feeling. It's just an empty feeling. I can't think of the words because there's a lot of coaches out there who have felt it, and it's awful, just awful.
Yeah, the way the situation was handled, there was definitely a better path towards this outcome. Like the outcome's still gonna suck regardless,
Yeah.
but there was definitely a way to make it where like, sorry, I'm like definitely going under the weather. Hey, my voice has been going, my throat's been getting messed up.
It might be more than allergies.
Yeah, and it might be a little bit more than allergies. But there was definitely a way to make it where it would still hurt. There's no way for it not to, but where you can at least give the athletes time and let them. So well, this is something I didn't understand at first. School's been out for a few weeks now.
May 2nd.
Oh, I thought they were still in school.
Nope. We're all
That
home.
oh my
That's what I
god.
said. When I said storage units, they're all setting up their housing plans for next year. Everyone goes home. I got swimmers in 14 states. They all rent storage units.
Yeah,
No one, very few live off campus, and they all have multiple sets of supplies in storage units, and they're there now. These kids are ideally not coming back. Their gear, their clothes, their furniture, everything is in storage, and it's been so for, it was announced on May 20th, so it was 19 days. So I don't have any I don't have an answer for that either. But yeah, we've been out for weeks.
that's insanity. Like that adds like a whole new layer of how messed up this whole situation is. Like, and then the tennis team finding out while they were at their nationals that that would be the last one they'd ever get.
Yeah. It's yeah, I've talked to I've actually talked to two tennis players. I happened to be on campus and saw them last week, and a lot of my swimmers, and that's just the thing that's got them reeling is they just feel betrayed. They who they feel we are taught and encouraged to be um, as community members and as valued community members. They feel betrayed. They feel let down. They feel like, and LMU would say the same thing a year and a half ago. I'm sure Cal Poly felt it. Um, 100 years ago, Cal State LA, Cal State Northridge, UC Davis men, my program at Chico State, we all felt that way. We all felt betrayed. We all felt let down. We all felt like we didn't have a voice. There's no that. And these are formative, really important years for these young people. And at our level, and this is how I recruit. Like you're coming here to become a productive member of this community. We're going to make you faster. But ultimately, we know that your career is going to end. Your clock starts when you get on campus, and it ends your last day of conference, unless you're fortunate enough to make NC2As. So our job is to make the whole you better, to help you with your academic progress towards degree, with your walk, your faithful walk, if you are indeed pursuing that, and of course with your athletic pursuits, and then who you are as a human being, and to have you know to promise that, to bring them in, and then to have this be taken out from under them, without getting into the nitty gritty and the politics of it. Um, that's it's going to be hard to it's going to be hard to overcome. I swim a relay across Lake Tahoe every summer with some former college teammates. We're all slightly older now than we were at Chico State, and our old coach Clark Yeager joins us, and we talk about some of the old stories. All of our wives and our kids are sick of the stories, but inevitably it comes back to what happened at the end. And he apologizes. He apologizes for what happened in 1991 that he couldn't do enough to save our program and to give us a chance to finish out. And that has eaten him up, for 34 years. And when I talked to him last week about this, he had empathy and he loves me and everything about it. But he's been through it. And unfortunately he sees the landscape changing. And as I said, LMU, Cal Poly, we're all going through it. And for young people to experience this, and it's different than tragedy. I get it. We've experienced tragedy here as well, but it's different. It's just it's a different sort of pain and anguish, if you will. And it's you know magnified. It's blown up. Like 55 athletes here and about 10 tennis players on the men's side and 10 on the women's side. It's and then our alumni bases and our families and um, hard to thousands of people have felt this pain. So I'm not looking for I'm not looking for anything special, but it doesn't make it any easier that we're all going through it.
Yeah, I mean, and it becomes all the frustrating for me as someone watching from the outside. Like seeing programs like University of Pacific just added 4 programs. They added men's and women's diving. So there are schools that are seeing this changing landscape and choosing, instead of taking the easy route and cutting teams, they're adding more teams and adding more options for revenue and to bring in more people to the school. Like, it's something that I wish we were seeing more of. That I wish like the easy route wasn't being taken of, oh well, I need some more money, so goodbye swimming and diving, goodbye tennis, goodbye any sport that doesn't make me money immediately. But then there's also, like, this is something that I've been like parroting for months now, is non-revenue sports are only non-revenue sports because the people who make the decisions have decided that these sports don't make money. Like when like Division One NCAA's happened, you'd go on to ESPN and you'd try to find swimming, and it was nowhere. You'd type in swim, and the first option that would show up was a guy named Sean Swim, and then a bunch of football highlights, and then swimming.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you put this sport on the forefront when it's time for that sport to be in the spotlight, and you gave it more of a chance, it would make more money. It like there's so many things that I could say, like not having people commentating prelims. No one's gonna watch. Put somebody in there commentating prelims. Get like Kyle Sockwell in there. He'd do it for free. I'd do it for free.
I love when he said that last year. I thought it was great because you're just hearing beeps and a starter and just whistles in the background. I thought any of us would.
Yeah,
Anyone that's ever been on a pool deck that has any kind of voice about the sport could have done a live feed talking about that because that's somebody's kid out there,
yeah,
and they worked their tails off to get to that point. I don't care if they make prelims. You're at NC2As. You're at
they deserve to have their name said.
like give every kid a voice. And there's a reason why the sport struggles because you're not giving every kid a voice. Like we ran a meet last year, our inter squad, our green versus gold. We decided to do it at night, on a whim. And the city of Irvine, William Willett Aquatic Center did it. It was so nice to let us start our meet at 6 o'clock. We brought in 14 recruits. We had our women's lacrosse coach come and DJ it, set up lights that were flickering. We picked a couple of songs. We of course started with "Thunderstruck" from AC/DC. I'm old, it's what it is, as the first song. But then we swam that meet for 2 hours under the lights at the third week in June in Irvine, California. It was probably 70 degrees. I had 14 recruits who were just gaga. The next morning they went to the beach, they come to a barbecue. I don't know, those 14 kids, seven signed. And they cited that night because quote unquote swimming is boring, but we decided to do something a little bit different. And look at what Howard's done. Look at what some of these schools, they highlight these different dual meets and this and that. And Sockwell's been a great voice, and you've been a great voice. It's not boring if you don't make it boring. And if you
Exactly.
make it interesting and entertaining, there's an audience because all those kids have friends, have family, have people that would tune in or would show up if you make it viable. Make it viable. And it goes for my sons went to UCLA. They told me stories about the gymnastics program. To an outsider, gymnastics to some people is probably boring as heck. You watch Caitlin Ohashi a bunch of years ago for UCLA do gymnastics, it's not boring. It's really entertaining. And if you make it that way, it is. But all these kids have worked their tails off to get to this point. Don't tell them their sport's boring. Don't tell them it's not worth it. Don't tell them you can't make money. You can. You have to be creative. And our schools tried to talk about that and ways we could do it. And the nighttime swim meet, that was my idea. And we were going to try and do it again this year. We're going to try and do some different things. And I just, you know, I understand revenue and I understand budget. I understand, I do understand all that stuff. But when the decision is we're going to eliminate instead of be creative and add and save, I don't know. It hurts. Like I said, I don't have a lot of detail on it, and why us, and I could, go down all those roads. It's not necessary. I just know what it meant to my kids, this team and their families, and knowing what we had planned. I'll be blunt. We were going to be good. I mean, we really were. We were getting good kids and good in the classroom, and they were fast and they were excited. And, it's Irvine. We're 15 minutes from the beach. It's an amazing
Yeah.
place to be. And it is a great school. It really is. And I, been here for 6 years and figured I was gonna be here for a lot more. And I was convinced and sold on everything. I was in hook, line, and sinker, and that's how I was recruiting to telling the athletes the same thing. And you know, it's not boring if you don't make it boring. It's just not.
I mean, like for me, like I announced at a community college state championships like a month ago now, actually. And for me, like coming out of community college swimming, like it's always been important to me. It's always been an important part of the sport to me. But it's also something that, like, you ask any average swim fan, they're gonna be like, there are people swimming in community colleges.
Yeah.
So last year when my college coach Jason Craighead, he like texted me while the state championships were happening, and he was like, "This announcer sucks. We're bringing you next year." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm in." And I get to the meet, and I'm like, "These athletes have worked years for a moment like this. Like, I'm gonna put as much into it as possible." Like by the third day, I was like downing tea because my voice sounded like this.
Yeah.
But they also had like a DJ, and they had like parents in the audience were getting like cheering and hyped up. Like the energy was palpable, and it was because it was a combination of like the DJ, and I was sitting there like doing research about each athlete to have like something interesting to say about them. Like,
Right.
it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
another example is like on like a broader scale, like at the Olympics, when we cut to ads in the middle of distance events,
Yep.
and you've got like 8 of the top 15 in history are all in the same race at the same time, and the gold medal could come from anywhere. And you're cutting to like an ad for, I don't know, Toyota. Like,
Right.
it's all of these things that I think are hindering the sport so much, that's putting this mindset into people who don't know it as well, of like, oh, well, swimming's never going to make money.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many things I could say. Like, it frustrates me to no end that we exist in a time where like swimming is one of the most watched sports on an Olympic level. Like, I think it's second behind gymnastics fairly consistently. And that's even in a time when like Michael Phelps isn't around anymore.
Right.
Like when he was around, it was probably the top sport watched at the Olympics every time he was there. So just this idea that like swimming cannot generate money, and that it should be the first thing that we get rid of because it loses so much money, it just makes me angry and frustrated, because it's gonna take away so many opportunities. Like, a lot of these teams get cut and they never come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a million things that can be said. Like it just sucks. I mean, like I look at like Cal State, and like I look at the state of California college swimming, and it's becoming increasingly dire. Where there are considerably less options now than there were like 20 years ago.
I used to have this, my first couple of years I went back and I did research on it, and I kind of used it in recruiting, but I think kids kind of looked at me like I was nuts because it was so long ago. But you can go to the NC2A, and I think it was between 1964 and like 2002. And I think in that stretch, I can't remember, I think it were like 53 NC2A Division two national meets. And of that 52, it was like 33 of them were won by schools in California. San Diego State, UC Irvine, my alma mater, Chico State won four, Cal State Northridge. Ernie McGlisco left Chico, went to Bakersfield. They won a ton. UC Irvine, all these schools, and Pete McCarty at Northridge in the 80s, like, Ernie gave way to my coach, Clark Yeager. Jerry Hinsdale never won a national championship at Davis, but he built a Division two power. My brother swam there. Like all these schools for all that stretch. And then, call Title IX, called all the, California state budget, all these things. Those teams started drying up in the 90s. And by the time you hit 2002, 2003, it shifted. It went to Drury, and then it moved all the way east. And all these schools, Queens, which now moved out to Division One, were, if your maximum amount of scholarships was 8.25, they were giving six. They were giving 6.5, and they were bringing in Europeans. And you can debate whether or not that was the right way to do it or not. But when I swam in the old NCAC conference, it was Chico, Davis, Hayward, which is now East Bay, and it was co-ed, Sac State, Humboldt. We were the only Division two non-scholarship conference in the country. And my 3 years, we finished third, fifth, and fourth at nationals. Davis was top 10. Like, we knew how to do it. You didn't necessarily need money. It was it. And then the shift happened in the 2000s, and everything moved, eastward to all these schools, and money increased, and everything in California dried up, completely dried up. And in the last, 20 years, we all shifted. We all were born, Azusa Pacific and Fresno Pacific and Concordia, Westmont. We were all born in NAIA, moved up to Division two. But we used to host NC2As. We hosted it in '83 and '87. Chico State did in Long Beach, the old Belmont pool, because there were enough teams on the West Coast. You could justify the expense. You could never do that now. Yeah, there's no one left on the West Coast. The entire state just lost it. And then you go up, and it includes down here. It's Cal State LA, and it was I think I don't know if Dominguez ever had a team. Irvine did, Long Beach did. Some of them went D1, and then some of them just died out. And this state, why we can't have we have so many 2-year programs, so why can't we have 4-year programs with the sport in the state that is arguably one of the most successful states for turning out aquatic athletes, especially swimmers, and yet we probably have the worst track record per capita of holding on to those programs. And it's happening again. The cycle's happening again. They're starting to dry up or save themselves. We're going to go Division three to save ourselves from what's coming. I don't know. I mean, it's history's repeating itself. It's scary, but it's happening again.
Yeah, the scary part is, like, you're exactly right. Like, I mean, in a state where we have, like, California is one of the most successful states for Olympic swimming ever. I mean, like, there's so much history here. Like, just around where I live, there's, like, the May Nissen pool where, like, Mark Spitz set world records in the 70s. There's, like, the George Haynes pool, like, 40 minutes down the road. There's Cal Berkeley. There's Stanford. Like, there's so many different programs and, like, just pools and places that carry so much history just within the Bay Area, much less the entire state. So it makes me increasingly sad that, like, we're heading to a point where, like, or we're already there, where, like, California is when NCAA's are never going to be hosted here. It's something that I wish would happen, but
Right.
it's never going to happen. I mean, it might also be because the likelihood of it raining in March is pretty high. But
Right.
it's we're never gonna have any big meets like that hosted here. The only exception is like sometimes they do U.S. Nationals in Irvine, and I think
That's
like
our pool.
yeah,
That's
like
and the city, it's two 50-meter pools, and the city has basically committed. They're building a third 50
yeah.
meter pool sometime in the next year and a half. They're going to have three 50-meter pools side by side by side. The grandstands have already been built for the summer season, which is, I
Oh,
mean,
it's because they're
Matthew
ramping up
Hassel's there.
for Pan Pacific Championships. Will be there next year too. That's probably
Yeah,
why they're
I
building the
mean,
pool.
we've got pools. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got pools. We've got bodies. You were talking about people like Matt Biondi lives down here. Coached a high school team for a lot of years. I helped coach a high school team down here in San Juan Capistrano. Janet Evans' daughter is graduating. I quote unquote helped coach her this year. Janet Evans, I had a conversation with her last week. Like there's the legacy of swimmers and swimming and what exists. There are pools. There's everything we need, just the creativity and the foundation to decide, all right, how do we make this work? How do we make this financially feasible? You don't necessarily need to make money, you just need to make it so that it's feasible and you're providing opportunities. That's what it's about.
Yeah. It it's unfortunately there are people who just want to take the easy route of say like, well, this isn't immediately making me money, so I'm done. I don't want to do it. Which is just it's so frustrating.
What my my counter to that, and it's where I've ever gone. I've never had my own pool. I've coached three different high schools. I was fortunate to coach at a club program that had a relatively new pool, and Concordia doesn't have its own pool. And the talk of, oh, do we build a pool and this and that, and I don't have studies and analysis, but a pool in California can operate, okay, take out cleaning, take out maybe Christmas week, 45, 48 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And if it's on a high school campus or a college campus, okay, maybe early morning, late afternoon after that school's programming is done, but there's a couple hours in the morning, maybe, but there's 4 hours in the afternoon. In the summer, everything shuts down. You have 12 weeks. You can run programming all year long, whether you're a community pool, whether you're a city pool, a high school, community college, or college pool. Tell me what you do on a softball field. Tell me what you do with tennis courts.
Yeah.
Tell me what you do with a track. Can you make that money? A pool, I learned this years ago. The numbers have all changed. It costs it costs less to build a pool than it does to operate it. Um, Literally build a pool, and then if you program it correctly, it pays for itself. It pays for operations, upkeep, maintenance, staffing, that kind of stuff. If you build it right, because you can do swimming, you can do water polo, you can do instructional classes, swim lessons, rec swim. Woolett's got underwater hockey, underwater torpedo league, synchronized swimming, and they have 250 meter. I mean, if you program it correctly, there are user groups that will use a pool all the time. You're not doing that with tennis courts. You're not
Yeah.
doing that with a softball field. You're not doing it because I mean, you'll tear up a softball field, a baseball, that kind of thing. But you can run a pool. It's just, it's a profit maker. It
Yeah.
really is. If you're creative and if you take the time to research it.
Well, and they're keeping the water polo team now.
Yeah, men's and women's water polo, both staying.
Well, that's what like baffled my college coach when I was talking to him about it, because he's like, how much money are they really gonna save? They're still gonna rent out the pool space. It
Yeah.
like I mean, there's obviously other factors that go into funding a team, but like the question I keep asking myself if like you really want to save that money, like it. I don't know. It angers me the amount of schools that are now cutting programs and citing like the house settlement among other things. I know there was other reasons cited for this specific
Right.
program, but when like I bring it up again, like you've got a school like University of Pacific who's taking that house settlement and being like, okay, well, we'll add more teams.
Yeah. I've got good relationships with, I call us our aquatics team. The men's and women's water polo coaches. I was part of a group that at least sat and interviewed a bunch of these guys, and I was thrilled with the two men we brought in to run the program. So I don't look at it as an us versus them thing, but
Oh yeah, no, that's not at
yeah,
all what I meant.
yeah, and I know, and it's, but you're right, it's still because we're all still renting. I don't know the details of the quote unquote why us, and we're all renting. We share pool space. We actually share a storage unit. I was talking to one of those coaches today about stuff that's in our storage unit, and he's trying to figure out what they can use. Which, yeah, we all purchased it. It was budgeted. It was paid for. If you can use it, use it. So there's not. I'm not chewing on bitter gum here with those guys. But yeah, I mean that's that. I mean. I would say the best way to describe it, we had a robust aquatics program.
Yeah,
We had a men's and women's swim team. We had two female divers. We have a full men's and women's water polo team. Our men lost a conference championship last year. Literally one win away from making NC2As. Our women are moving to a Division II conference next year. The coaches are just great guys and have done amazing work with recruiting, and their programs are improving. We've got a couple of athletes. I've got a couple of women's water polo players on my roster, and I have a couple of men's water polo players on my roster. Where it works, and they can, they can contribute to both rosters. We can do that, and that's something else you can't do at other levels. You can't do that at Division I. If it fits and the athletes contribute to both rosters, we're the three of us are willing to make that work for a student athlete who happens to be that talented and driven and focused. And now we take that away. I mean, we just it's as you said, it's opportunities for, in my case, 56, 54, 56 athletes that don't exist. And now, with shrinking opportunities, I got kids looking at schools in North Carolina and Iowa and New Jersey and Minnesota, and some of them have 1 year left, maybe 2 years left.
yeah.
Like, okay, you got to make sure your units transfer and your credits transfer, and do you want to do that and start over? And we had our community. I mean, we had our aquatics community here, and that's it's a hard thing for all of us to, you know, handle the emotion of that.
It reminds me in a lot of ways of like when I chatted with some of the Cal Poly athletes, because I talked to them like pretty much the day after they had that meeting, and they were telling me like, we don't need the fancy bells and whistles. We don't need like 5-team shirts or like paid for tech suits, or like we don't need to like fly to travel meets or stuff like that. Like, it's this thing that I think a lot of athletic directors are not really, in my opinion, are not really doing their job well when this doesn't happen. Is like just communicating with the team and finding a way, instead of just saying we are cutting the team, like finding a way to make it work for both parties, if that makes sense.
I would have liked that chance.
Yeah.
I would have liked that opportunity.
Yeah, it hurts so much when like it's a simple we're done, especially at this point in the year. Like at the point in the year where there's so little opportunity to find a new home. There was an athlete who I was at that meet that I announced at, who had committed to swim for you guys like 5 days before the announcement went up. So it just, because I mean, all of these commitments, they have to go through the athletic director, right?
Yeah. It starts at compliance, athletic director, etc. There's a 4 or 5 signature route
Yeah.
they've got to follow. Yeah.
So it again reminds me of like when the Cal Poly team found out they were getting cut. And I think I put this in my article, which I'm blanking on the name of the gentleman who I got a very lucky text right as the announcement was happening that let me like immediately get started on writing this article and getting it out there as much as possible. So thank you to whoever informed me so that I could report on it.
I mean, ours or Cal Poly's?
For your team, like somebody was texting me as it was happening,
Okay.
and I don't know who it was, but I feel very honored that they like thought that I would do something, and I'm like, yes, I will do something.
You You and Kyle Sockwell and Braden Keith were the first ones that these kids were.
Yeah.
I've heard now the story and passing that they were all, some were alternately screenshotting the presentation and others
Oh,
were
I got
making.
sent a video.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an awful situation, but it does make me feel happy that at least the efforts that I'm doing to try to promote the sport are getting recognized.
yeah.
That people are coming to me with this, but it still sucks. I'm trying to find. I put it in the. I think I put it in this article. I think the editor might have taken it out. Where oh no, okay. The timing of this decision eerily echoes that of the Cal Poly Mustangs, who were informed of their team discontinuation on the same day as a committed recruit visiting campus.
Wow.
So it that's what it reminds me of like you knew, you had to have known. Like, and I don't want to get like caught up in all the negative aspects of this, but like you had to have known that the team was going to get cut. That that's what you wanted to do while you were signing on these recruits. And it's something that I think thankfully people are being more aware of now, of like these decisions are hurting athletes and these decisions are hurting like futures and academic careers, and it's this team deserved much better. And I know you believe that. I know a lot of people believe, but this team deserved better than finding out a month after school ends. Like that like made me so much more angry to know that. Like finding out a month after school ends when you've gone home to other states and you've left your stuff on campus and you're like planning for the fall, to then all of a sudden be like, oh shoot, I might have to find a new place to go to school. It's like beyond athletics with the way, because I'm in college right now myself, with the way college transfers work and with the way colleges gouge students for every single last penny, to do that to these student athletes is just, it's, there's no way to justify it. Sorry, I'll calm down now.
Yeah, I've shared the. My wife has been an amazing. My wife and my sons have been amazing listeners for the last week, because I've gone, as I said, I've gone through all that. I've gone through anger and frustration and confusion and sadness. I've tried to find. There's no justification. I just it's hard to put into words what we've all experienced, and I've definitely found myself haven't cried in a couple days, which is really good. But every time I get on the phone with one of the kids, it still comes up, heart goes up into your throat, kind of thing, and you just feel bad. I don't have answers. We had a team Zoom call Thursday night, so 2 nights after they had found out, and that was hard because they had a million questions for me. I wasn't on that call. I never saw a transcript. I don't know what they were told. I never saw numbers, but they wanted answers, and they knew I wasn't responsible and I didn't know. And it was part of it was therapy. I was answering what I could without trying to disparage and demean and I wasn't trying to stoke any fires. They were already pretty inflamed at that point. But yeah, it was hard because on that call we had athletes that were going into their senior year. We had athletes that were seniors in high school that had either awards night or prom or graduation still coming up in the next couple of days. And they had met each other on recruiting trips, but this is it. And I said, no, this call is for everybody. This calls for anyone that was going to be a member of this 55-person team. And they're all coming from different perspectives and backgrounds. And I could, there was head shaking and there was, clenching of teeth and people had written notes and a couple of them were looking up at mom or dad, who were trying to, hey, ask this question, ask that question. And I was trying to answer truthfully, but the reality was I wasn't hiding anything because I don't have anything to hide,
Yeah.
and I certainly don't want to be bitter and negative around them. But I didn't have answers, and I don't have answers. My as I said and what I communicated was my assistants and I, Chad Maurer, Ryan Martinez, even our GA, who was amazing, Hannah Chabin and Paige Tattersall, who swim at Pepperdine, we were taking calls, we were taking texts, we were trying to, pray with them, talk with them, counsel them, and then find solutions. Do you want to transfer? Do you want to wait? Do you want to go to a 2 year, a 4 year? I mean, do you want to continue swimming? So we've all done that for weeks, excuse me. We've done that for a week. While one of my assistants, Paige, who just got her master's 3 weeks ago from us, has been, going through the interview process for weeks trying to find her next job. And she's been hanging in, talking to and helping our student athletes. And my assistants all have club jobs and high school jobs. We've been finishing up CIF. We've been finishing up the state meet while, state CIF meet while, now hearing this and working through this. So it's been, we've been we're fine tuning our ability to multitask. I will say that. And at the same time, manage our emotions because it's been a lot.
Yeah, it like I mean I've always cared about the sport. Obviously, like I've always been passionate about swimming, but for me personally, like, and I told you this, like I was very lucky in my community college swimming where I was meant to only swim for 2 years. And I think I was one of the very few people who benefited this much from COVID. Of our first season got cut short, and then our 2021 season was we got to compete against as many schools as we wanted, do as many meets as we wanted, and it would not count towards anything. That it was just a free year. So then I had transferred out at that point, but I did a third and fourth year in what was technically my freshman and sophomore year. So it's beyond just caring about the sport and being passionate about the sport and people getting to participate in it. It's always kind of like struck a chord with me when that experience is cut short, especially because mine was way longer than I ever expected it to be. But it's any of these athletes, like if they ever need to talk about like and just vent about anything, like let them know, send them my way. Like I love the sport and I love talking about it with anybody who loves the sport, and I love just helping people. I mean I like helping people.
Yeah.
That's a good sentence. I don't know it. I'm hoping for good things for all of these athletes. I know right now they're probably in the trenches of trying to figure out where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do, am I going to continue swimming, and it's heartbreaking in a lot of ways. But I hope any of them that are listening to this, like, you guys deserved better, and I hope you find better.
I appreciate that on their behalf. I do, and like I said, they know who you are and how to get in touch with you, and I think they're appreciative, as am I, for
Yeah.
the voice you're providing. Any of you guys that are doing this out there and trying to communicate what a great sport and then a great community we are inside of the sport, I think is important because as crappy as this been, has horrendously crappy as it has been, it has shown an amazingly supportive and kind side to this team. They were joking that we went through some normal early season, cultural issues and challenges, personality conflicts last year, and it took us a long time to work through it. And by the time we got to conference, we were much better. But they have all kind of joked that this thing has set aside any
Yeah.
personal conflicts they've ever felt because the shared experience of this sport that has now been taken from them. As you were saying, if you're ending on your own terms, great, wonderful. You've decided to end it. I swam for masters 15 years after I left college because I love the sport. I just wanted to keep going, and I did it for another 15 years. But to have it taken from you, and not because of an injury, but my son was a COVID senior. He lost his senior year of high school because it's shut down in February. And he had all these dreams of this and that. And the guy who replaced me was my longtime assistant. And I now know, in a weird way, to an extent, what my son felt to have that, just having that control taken away from you. Nope, you're done. Your career is now over. And experience that on behalf of my athletes who, again, fortunately and possibly have a chance to go somewhere else. But it's it's to have that happen and not be in control of it, I think is the toughest thing. And they've all said they're changed. If nothing else in the last week, the bitterness and the distrust and what they feel has been done to them has forged a connection and a tie that is not going to be undone. And they're all going to, unfortunately, they're going to scatter. They're all, our last day together was whatever, February 15th as a team. And our last practice together was April 18th. And this group will never be in a room together. They'll never be on deck together. They'll never wear our gear together again as a group. But I think, this has created something this significant negative thing that was done to them has created something in them that I am in awe of, for lack of a better way of putting it. Just very impressed with who these people, and that goes for the incoming freshmen, and that goes for, the group that was going to be seniors. It's just they've been something special for the last, 7 days.
I think people underestimate how well you can unify a bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds by just being the bad guy. like
Yeah.
like just if you're looking for a way to unify a bunch of college students, just piss them off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it kind of breaks my heart to hear that in a way, because I mean, it does break my heart to hear that. Like a week ago or a week and a half ago, I got to go down to Cal Poly, and I went to their like team dinner that they put on, because I say lucky, but they were lucky enough is the wrong phrasing I'll use, to find out in March, which I think is still way too late to find out. But they were told in March, and they at least got to like have like a team celebration that they put on, like a this is what we did, like this is our team, and they were all in the same room together. And I'm sitting there talking to a lot of these athletes, and they're like, this is the first time we've all been in the same room since we got told the team got cut. Because at least the Cal Poly athletic director had the gall to tell them in person, like to their face. And it breaks my heart, because yeah, a lot of these athletes, they're not gonna see each other again, and that just sucks. Like I like to spin a positive things on things. Like I like to be it's called Big Friendly Swim Podcast, but like there's no getting around the crappiness of that situation.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see a lot more of it, unfortunately. It's just the thing that scares me, is that like there are a lot more teams that are in coming years gonna be like, I mean, and I've managed to go, like, honestly, Concordia, University, Irvine was on my list of schools that I was gonna reach out to for next year to try and get out and visit. But like I went down to Chapman, I went to UC Santa Cruz. Like I'm lucky enough that there's like 10 schools in the Bay Area, and I went to like all of them. And it like, so I know fairly well how well these schools are improving and how well their athletes are doing. So it scares me that like we're heading towards a point where like in 20 years there might be like what, 5 swim programs in California?
Yeah. If the NC2A exists.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this already, but there are so many things that I could say about how the sport is covered, about how the sport is run, about how the sport is mismanaged. Like, swimming could be an every year sport. And I know I'm trying to make that happen. I know Kyle Sockwell's trying to make that happen. I know Swimming World Magazine, like any place that's covering the sport, they're trying to make that happen. But it's stuff like this where teams just get cut on the whim of somebody who isn't thinking about how that's going to hurt the athletes involved, that it hurts the sport irreparably.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if this was just a normal year and I was just having this conversation about the state of swimming and the state of swimming in the NC2A and the state of swimming in California, I probably would have had a different tone, probably still cautionary. Um, Sitting here now a week removed from the abruptness of this and what it feels like and realizing, wait, I thought we were okay. I thought
Yeah.
we were okay. Um, and realizing that getting bits and pieces about other programs and what they're dealing with financially as institutions, et cetera, and what they're, there's conference realignment coming in our conference and the whole bit. Suddenly be sitting here and realizing, wait, if this can happen to us, if this can be done to us, holy cow. And to
Yeah.
your point, I don't know if it's 20 years.
Yeah.
Talking to my old college coach, it could be 3 to 5, and it's not just swimming.
There's
It's
like Grand Canyon University's volleyball team who were like, I
yeah,
think they were top four in the country.
yeah,
They're just gone. And then like the athletic director is warning other coaches that they would get fired if they spoke out in support of the team.
yeah. It's yeah. I mean, it's a lot of sport. I mean, it seems randomly chosen swimming and tennis. I know there's going to be, I know there was, they had laid it all out there, but I mean, it's going to be, it's anybody. It's stunt and it's volleyball and it's other aquatic sports and, um, lacrosse. I mean, it's, I don't know.
This was something I'm still trying to look into this. So you might be able to tell me more. But Nancy Hogshead, I don't know if you know that, in 1984
Yeah.
Olympic champion 100 freestyle. She left a comment on the article that I wrote, and I've been trying to reach out to her to talk about this. Um, but she said that like specifically cutting women's swimming puts Concordia University Irvine out of Title IX compliance. Which, to be so honest with you, I do not understand how Title IX works. I probably should. I'm trying, but it's one of the things that I don't understand as much. But so I'm trying to reach out to her to talk about it. But that's another thing that I think throws a wrench into this. Is like a lot of athletic directors are just like, they're not being held accountable for the things they're supposed to be getting held accountable for.
The basic of it is there needs to be relative to the student population, there needs to be a equally proportionate amount of women's athletic opportunities, individual athletic opportunities. So if it's, I was using this analogy the other day, if there's 1,000 students in the school, and it's 60% women, 40% men, there should be 60 athletic spots for women and 40 athletic spots for men. Back in the day when it hit Chico State, and a lot of the characters in this have are actually deceased. They use that argument on us when they eliminated men's and women's swimming and diving, wrestling, and I can't remember something else in
That would have
that.
been right around the time as at the time Cal State Hayward, right?
Yeah, it was Cal State Hayward at the time. It's now East Bay as women only, but they were in our conference and they had a real small program, but they were, it was we had a great little, it was such a fun little conference, but
Yeah.
they eliminated it in 1991. And by 19, and at the time we had a Division II football program. We did Davis, I think Sac State. I don't think they'd gone D1 yet. There were a couple. There weren't a lot left. D2 football has gone the way of the dinosaur, but they kept football. And they cited all sorts of just bizarre examples. I've got college teammates who fought passionately for the year 90-91 when I was gone. They kept football, but by 1995, they eliminated football at Chico State. I think there's 5 sports left up there, and I love Chico State. I'm a proud alumnus of the team. I don't love the university. I love the town. There's about 35 of our Chico State swimming and diving alums all getting inducted at once in a single Hall of Fame ceremony in September because they're tired of us for the last 30 years telling them that we were the best sport at your school forever And even though you've eliminated us, all these guys should be inducted. And they finally took our case and said, listen, we're just going to induct all of these guys you want in. So all at once, 35 men are getting inducted in September because we deserve it. We were good.
Yeah.
And they pulled a program that they didn't have to kill. And they eliminated football years later, and they claimed Title IX, but it makes no sense. And I'm not going to pick on football. It's schools using Title IX as an excuse to eliminate non-revenue sports. That's what it was. It wasn't football. It wasn't what that program meant to Chico State. It's that they used it as an example. And I think schools today are using the House settlement and NIL as a reason to eliminate programs for the same reason. They're not profitable, and we have an out now, as opposed to just saying we're going to do it. That's it. Now, not saying they're not financially struggling, but you're using something. Your schools are using that as oh my gosh, here's our excuse. We can do this. We can eliminate this and use this case, this issue, as the justification for it. And I don't. And history's repeating itself, and I don't think that's fair. It's
And
just not.
I mean, like to again mention like University of Pacific, there's a program who is the complete opposite, whereas other schools are saying, "Oh, we have this reason, we have an out and out to just cut teams that aren't making money." University of Pacific is like, "Oh, we need to like change how many teams we have in order to be in like Title IX compliance or in order to like bring more people to the school. Cool, let's add teams." Like there's University of Pacific, they had a diving team. It had never officially been cut. It just they didn't have any athletes on the roster. They didn't recruit any athletes, and now they're officially doing that again. Right. But like adding like track and field, cross country, like there's ways to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's you know it was such an obscure law going back to 1972, and when it was quote unquote rediscovered in the early 80s, and schools either were threatened with lawsuits and litigation, but other schools looked at it, as I said, as an opportunity. And I know ours was one where we can use this to eliminate. I think someone referred to it as the squeaky wheel. Like we eliminate the squeaky wheel. And my coach was absolutely that. And that was a guy who was a massive proponent for women's athletics, for Olympic sports. I mean, he just was. But he was also the squeakiest wheel at the university and in the athletic department. And, he was showing the door. So, application of these things I understand it, but applying them correctly and fairly and not penalizing student athletes for being student athletes in that sport, is probably the better route, the route you should be pursuing.
Yeah. The last thing I want to ask you about, because I know I've taken up so much of your time, and I appreciate you sitting down with me. But one of the athletes that I spoke with told me another reason cited on that Zoom call was the fires in LA in January. And now I'm not 100% sure of my geography, but I tried to look at where Concordia University Irvine is in relation to those fires. Was it like directly? I mean, obviously the smoke probably, but did you guys have to evacuate? Was it directly affecting where the school was?
No, we actually. That's interesting. No, Pepperdine University was in our conference for many, many, many years. My sister swam at University of San Diego a very, very long time ago, and Pepperdine was in the conference. And they are just north of where the fires were. So we would go up the last bunch of years and go swim and meet in October. So I know where it was. My brother lives in Calabasas. We weren't directly affected. We actually were practicing swimming meets and actually had a swimmer from Pepperdine and a diver from Pepperdine come, and we got them into Woollett, and they were training with us because they basically escaped. They had to get the heck out of there. So we weren't directly affected from a health standpoint. Economically as a region, maybe I don't know. It's never been brought up.
See, that's why it stuck out to me as is this just we're adding another reason on just.
Yeah, again, that's where I caution and I've told these guys, I told the kids every time I communicate with them, And there again, you said earlier, 18 to 22, 18 to 24-year-old kids. I have a tendency to verbal diarrhea.
Me too.
Blurt something out before I think through it. And thank goodness for my wife. But it's emotional times, and they're seizing on everything as a wrong, as a slight, as something that's done to them. And I don't want to diminish and dismiss my student athletes who I think are smart, impassioned people. Things have been done to them that I don't think should have been done, and done in a way that they shouldn't have been done. But I've cautioned them to be measured in your approach. If you are going online, if you're going on a podcast, if you're sending out emails, you're posting stuff on Instagram, do it in a measured,
Yeah,
mature way. I know it hurts. I know this tears at the foundation of who you are, but that's the point. Show them who you are. Show them who we are. There's ways to fight without being, without waving the biggest sword around, and jabbing it into the rib cage of the nearest person. You can use your voice in other ways. So I don't know who that was, or why they said it. I'm sure there's a reason that they did it, but as I said, I've been telling them for a week, be measured.
yeah,
Be measured in what you say, how you say it, and because the thing is, if you do it that way, and you show depth and breadth and wisdom beyond your years, they'll come back and talk to you again. And they'll come back and talk to you again. If you fly off the handle, if you're irrational, if you're citing all these weird things, they're going to look at it and go, right or wrong, this person may not be who we want to talk to, that kind
yeah,
of thing. And whether they're with us in the future or not, be examples of what God has put us on this earth to be, what their parents and families have brought them up to be, and what we want to be as representatives of Concordia University, Irvine. So, yeah, I've heard all sorts of things, and back and forth. And as I said, I'll never reprimand them. I love their passion and commitment, and frankly, their loyalty. So
yeah,
those are positives. The fires were awful. Yeah,
yeah. There were.
that's a whole side conversation. That's a whole other. I got family was up there. My parents got evacuated. Everybody knows somebody, as it were.
Yeah. Well, Coach Bert, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I'm really glad we are able to talk and like get your voice out there and get the voice of this team out there. Yeah, thanks for being here.
I appreciate it. How,
Yeah.
how does this work going forward? Is it something that'll be posted online, or you
Yeah,
guys
I'm
get
gonna I'm gonna
transcripts?
post it pretty much immediately, and then there'll also be an article for Swimming World magazine that's basically just like the video will be in it, and then it'll just be highlighting some of the stuff that we talked about.
Awesome. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Thank you
yeah,
I thank you for the support and what you're doing for swimming and diving, and especially in our state, and hopefully better days ahead.
yeah. I appreciate it fills me with a lot of bittersweet joy in a way that like the efforts that I'm doing like is getting more people onto the sport. Like that post that I made, I think is probably my most viewed post and most shared post, which sucks that it has to be that, but it's good that like I've always said like I want to use the platform that I have, however small it may be, to bring up people who I think are important and people who need to be highlighted and information that needs to be shared. Because like I was once an account with like 200 followers or like 20 followers, and there was like Olympians and bigger name people who were sharing my stuff. So it's like the way I see it is I'm paying it forward for what was done for me. But it's unfortunate that this is the news that needs to be shared.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well,
I agree.
yeah.
Hey, feel better.
Yeah, thank you. My voice is going. But I appreciate it. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. Anytime.